Today on The Joy of Editing, it's TK Friday, and today it is part 2 of my color grading tool deep dive. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Cully. It is TK Friday, and today, yes, it is part 2 of my color grading tool deep dive. I have some great stuff to show you today, so you don't want to miss any of this. And by the way, if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, you can save 15% off the TK9 plugin for Photoshop along with training videos. Use my promo code DK15. That gets you 15% off of everything. Not only are you saving money, but you're supporting the joy of editing with Dave Cully when you use that promo code DK15. Thank you all for using my promo code. I really appreciate it. It's time to take that deep dive and have some fun with a color grading tool. It is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. I'll show you something really cool in the color grading tool, but first, let's do this. Let's say we want to color grade the foreground. So what we can do is, on the combo or CX panel, see the sky selection button, double-click it. That will select the foreground. And now what we can do is come up to the multi-mask panel. You'll notice we have a selection. And we can click on the color grading tool, and just like that, we have a mask that is only going to let the effect be applied to the foreground. Now, isn't that cool? What I think I want to do to the foreground is warm it up a little bit, and I want to let the image help me out here. So what I'm going to do is click on the midtone button, and you see this button right here, the little picker. Have you ever wondered what that was for? It's a really powerful tool. Let me click on it. When I do, you notice a color picker comes up. And what I can do is sample some of the color from the image. And I'm going to sample like right here. And there is that color. Now, that doesn't mean you have to accept it there. If you want more saturation, you could kind of move to the right here, and that'll give you more saturation or less saturation to the left. But let's start out right there and click OK. And that really warms up that foreground. Now, that is pretty strong. Now, I'm going to give you a tip. So let me go ahead and reset the color grading tool by clicking this button right here. That resets the color grading tool. Now remember, I have a mask here. It's only going to affect the foreground. Let's click on the midtone button again. Now here's what I want to do. Change my opacity to 50%. Now here's a little tip for you. If you're using a tool that doesn't use number keys to change values of that tool, for instance, the brush tool, if you want to change the opacity of the brush, you could type 4 for 40% or 5 for 50% or 0 for 100%. But as long as you have a tool that doesn't use numbers to change the value, this little tip is for you. Now, you'll notice I have the Move tool here, and it doesn't use numbers to change anything. So what I can do is type my 5 key, but notice the opacity of the layer here. Whenever I type my 5 key, the layer opacity changes to 50%. Or if I type my 4 key, it'll go to 40%. I want 50%. And by the way, if you tap real quick, like 5/8, it goes to 58%. I'm going to type my 5 key and go back to 50%. I just wanted to point that out. That's a good little tip. Now the color grading layer is set to 50% opacity, and I like to use that whenever I'm using this picker for the color grading tool. And the reason for that, it gives you more fine tuning on the color wheel. In other words, I'm not going to use the picker right now. I'm just going to click on the midtone button. And you'll notice when I click, you won't see major changes, even if I come the whole way out to the edge here, for any of the different tones. Now remember, to use the color grading tool, your cursor, the tip of your cursor, whenever you get it to a point you want to drop a color grade, just click right there, and that's where that puck goes down. So I can warm it up more here. But you'll get more fine tuning. In other words, you won't get as big of color swings when you move around on the color grading tool, as you can see there. So that's kind of important. So now let me reset this. Now notice something. When I click reset right here, notice my opacity will go back to 100%. So I'm going to click reset, and notice the opacity did go back to 100%. So now I'll type my 5 key, and now it's back at 50%. And now I'm going to click the midtone button again. Now the tip for the color grading tool is to set your opacity at 50% to start out with, especially if you feel you're having a hard time controlling how much color you're putting down in the color grade. If you back that off to like 50%, it'll give you more fine tuning. In other words, it won't be as strong each time you click in different points. So that may help you fine tune your adjustment better. So that's good for general purpose color grading as well as using this picker tool. Now I'll click on the picker tool and the color picker comes up. Now, all we need to do is sample a color, and I like to do this because if I want to enrich a color, make it more saturated on the image, for instance, I'm going to click like right here and find this color right there, and there you can see it. Now, if I want more saturation, like I said, I could move this to the right, and then I could click here. So now it's going to be more saturated. Now, you don't notice anything until I click this button right here, so I'm going to click OK. And see, now that this is at 50%, if I shut this layer off, you notice that it looks pretty nice. Now notice something. Whenever I click on this picker tool, watch the image will go back and reset itself to no color grading. That's important. So I'm going to click this. And now, I don't know if you saw that there, but there is actually no color grading. And there's a reason for that, because this color grading tool was set up to sample colors from the image. And when you're using that picker, you don't want the image altered by a color grading, right? You want to sample the color off the image. So again, let me come like right here and click. This time I won't change the saturation. I'll click OK. And there we go. Now, if I need more, I can type my 6 key to get 60%, my 7 key to get 70%, my 8 key to get 80%, or what about if I wanted less, I can click my 4 key and now I get 40%. But let me go up to like 60%. I'm going to type my 6 key so you can really see it. Now I'm going to shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. See how it warms up that entire foreground? Now remember, I have this mask here that's only allowing the color grade to go to the foreground. Now let's say, I'm not sure if this is the direction I want to go, warming up those midtones in the foreground. What if I wanted the complementary color of that to see how that would affect it? Now notice right here, see where this little number symbol? This is a hex code right here, and that is the hex code for that particular color that I'm using. But you see this button here? This is the one where we can type in a hex code and click this button to apply that hex code. But if you hold your Command or Control key down while clicking this button, this puck will switch to its complementary color. This is really nice. So I'm going to hold my Command or Control key down and click this button. And now notice the puck has switched into cool tones, and now I'm cooling off the midtones instead of warming them up. I'm still at 60% layer opacity. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. So if you felt your field was too warm and you didn't like that, you can get the complementary color. Now, if I Command or Control click this again, it'll go back up and warm that field again. So that is how we can work with complementary colors, but that's not the only way that we can get a complementary color. We can use this color picker tool to get a complementary color, and let me show you. Here's a different image. It's an Adobe stock image, and it looks like it has some color grading already done to it. Let's say I want to change this foreground color. I don't want to affect the people, but here's what I can do here. I could go ahead and double click on the sky button on the combo or CX panel. That gets us the foreground. And now I can click on the color grading tool, and now we only have the foreground. But I don't want to affect the subject. So if I click on the subject button on the combo or CX panel, and now click on my layer mask calculator, which I truly love, click on active selection, and click minus to subtract it from this selection, you'll notice the people drop out. Isn't that cool? And if we click this double arrow button, we can see what that mask looks like. You see that right there? You'll note I still have the marching ants. So I'm going to click this button on the combo panel to deselect that. Now let's go back and look at that mask. Let's check it out. Let's click this double arrow button again. We can see the mask. Okay, notice that a little bit of that sky is selected there. So what I can do, I'm still in this mask mode. I'm going to click on my black brush, and with a brush at 100% opacity with a really soft edge, I'm just going to paint off this little area up here in the sky. Doesn't have to be perfect, but something like that, and over here I'll get this off as well. And now we'll click this button again. And now we don't have to worry about anything getting changed in the sky when I do some color grading. And as you'll note, working with selections along with the color grading tool is a powerful way of color grading. Now the next thing I want to show you is working with complementary colors with the picker tool. But here's something we can do. Now, the first thing we need to do is pick shadows, midtones, or highlights. I'm going to pick midtones because a lot of this color is in the midtone range in the grass. I want to see what the complementary color of that will look like. Now, remember my little tip. I'm going to change this to 50% opacity. I have my move tool, so I can just type my 5 key. That changes to 50% opacity. Now here's what you need to do with the picker tool. Instead of just clicking on this picker, hold your Command or Control key down and click on it. And now, whenever you pick a color, it'll give you the complementary color. So I want to change this green tone down here, so I'm going to click on this, and it picks that green tone. And now I can click OK. But notice it's picked the complementary color of that. Now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. And I like that, but if I want a stronger effect, remember, I'm still using my transform tool. I'm going to type my 6 key, my 7 key, and my 8 key. And I think I like it right there at 80%. Let me shut this layer off. But before I do, notice the people will not be affected, or the sky. I'm going to shut this off. Here's before and here's after. I've only color graded that grass. Isn't that cool? Now, let's do something else. What if I wanted to lighten up my subjects here, just to bring them out a little bit? We can also use the color grading tool just to work with this slider right here, the brightness slider, without a color grade. So let me do this. Let me click this button to select my subject. Now my subject is selected. Click the plus to add another color grading tool. It's only selecting the subject, right? And now let's click the midtone button because I want to lighten up their midtone. So I'm going to take this slider and start to drag it to the right a little bit. See how I can just lighten them up? Isn't that cool? And I could color grade too. If I wanted to warm them up a little bit, maybe I'll click right about here. Yeah, just give them a little bit of warmth. And maybe I want to darken up the shadows just a little bit. So I'll click on the shadow button. And remember, you don't have to just drag this. You can click. I'm going to click right here, maybe right in this area, a little bit more, just to darken up the shadows. See, it makes those tires a little bit darker in his shirt. So let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. And if I click this button on my combo panel, this is the overall before and after. But you see how I changed that? I used the complementary color for the grass with the picker tool. Remember, Command or Control key, hold that down when you click on the picker tool. Now another thing to remember, and I already pointed this out, but I want to point it out again. If you click on the picker tool, like I'll do right now, the color grade shuts off. So you can sample the color from the image the way it is before it's color graded. I'm just going to click cancel for now. But remember that. That's kind of important. Now let's talk about this HSB. What's this all about? Well, H stands for hue, S stands for saturation, and B stands for brightness. Now I'm dealing with shadows because you can see the shadow button is selected, and you can see that the shadow puck is dead center, right at 0, meaning the hue is at 0, the saturation is at 0. There is no color grade on this image. The B is at -21. Now let me give you the values here for H, S, and B. And I'm referring to the value ranges. The hue, and that's the entire circle around here, is 0 to 360. That's its values. Saturation is 0 up to 100 or 100% saturation. And the brightness can swing anywhere between -64 to +64. But right now in shadows, we have hue of 0, saturation of 0, meaning no color grading. Now if I switch over here to midtones, I'll click on the midtone button. Now you can see that right where that puck is sitting right there, hue is at 37 degrees. The saturation level of this puck is at 28. Now remember, it goes from 0 up to 100. And again, the hue is like in degrees around the circle here. 0 to 360. So H and S are dealing with the puck position, and the B deals with the brightness level. And right now, the brightness for this midtone is +20, and it can go between -64 up to +64. So that's what those numbers are representing. Now, if you look right here, this is the hex code for this color that the color puck is on right now. That is the hex code. Now we have another image. Let me go ahead and click on the color grading tool and click on the midtone button, because let's talk a little bit more about this hex code. If I click on this swatch, the color picker comes up. And let's say I'm going to take this slider and drag it up into the blues, somewhere right around in here. And let's click right here. And notice there is a hex code right there. So if you have a hex code that you've got from an image or a certain color that you like and you jotted down the hex code, you could copy that hex code. For instance, I can right click and copy this, And let me just click cancel out of here right now. And now I'm on midtones, right? So if I come here and click on this field or double click it, and then you could do a Command or Control V to paste that hex code in there. And then if you click this button right here, you'll accept that hex code, see right there? And that is that value of that hex code. Now, again, it may be too strong. I have my transform tool, so I could type, let's type in 5. And now I'm just adding that color grade onto the midtones right there. And that is the hex code. So if you have a hex code, you can paste it in there and click this button and apply it. So that is the hex code. And remember, if you want the complementary of that hex code, just hold your Command or Control key down and click, and now you have the complementary color of that hex code. And you might like that warm tone, and it's too strong, so let's go and type my 2 key, and now it's down to 20%. So hex codes can be something you can use, something you won't use that often, but in case you ever run into the case where you have a certain hex code you want to use, now you know how to apply it. And now here's a tip for you. Let's say we want this same color grade on shadows, midtones, and highlights. So what we can do is double click this hex code number, Command or Control C to copy that number. And then what we can do is let's click on shadows, and now double click on the hex code field, Command or Control V to paste it, and then click this button to apply it. And so now I've applied that same color grade to the shadows. And now let's click on the highlight button, double click here, do a Command or Control V, and click this button to apply it. And now I have the same color grade in shadows, midtones, and highlights. So let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. So sometimes you do want that, the same color grade on shadows, midtones, and highlights, and now you know how to do it. And now to make sure you can see that, now I have my transform tool, and I'm not using the transform tool. I'm only using it because I know I can use a shortcut on the layer opacity. So I'm going to type my 6 key. So now you can really see that color grade. Here is before and here is after, and that's too strong. So I'm going to type my 4 key and now my 3 key, and I think I like that. Next up, let's talk about using masking with color grading tools. So let me click on the color grading tool button on the multi-mask panel, and there's my color grading tool. I'm going to start out by clicking on the midtone button. I'm working on midtones, so I'm not sure if I want to warm the midtones up or cool them down. So what I'll do is let's drop a color grading point right here. I'm just going to click right here. That warms up the midtones, and you can see by the midtone puck right there. Now remember, if I want to get the complementary color, hold your Command or Control key down and click this button, and now that's the complementary color. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. And you know what? I think I like that. Cools down the entire image a little bit, but I only want to stick to midtones, and I'm on midtones here, but as you can see as I shut this off and turn it on, it's a pretty broad adjustment. It's encompassing a lot of the image here. It's really overlapping into shadows and highlights as well, but I really want to concentrate on the midtones. So here's what we can do. I'm going to click the X here to get out of the color grading tool. Nothing changes here. And now here's what I like to do. Click on this button to go into edit layer mask mode. And now I can try different luminosity masks. But I'm working on midtones, right? So let me click on midtones 1 and watch the image when I click on that. See how the adjustment gets really toned down. I'm back to all the original warm colors of the image. Here's midtones 2. Now that's not affecting the image as much because I have this midtones 2 mask on here, and I kind of like the way that looks. Let me disable this mask by clicking this button, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to click this X. See how it's affecting more of the image. Now when I click the X again and turn that mask back on, yes, it's targeting more of the midtones, and I like that. Now let's say I want to work with the shadows. Let me X out of the edit layer mask mode by clicking this X. Nothing changes. I still have my mask. Let me click on the color grading tool button again. There's my color grade for that layer. Now here's something very important. If I want to work in the shadows, I cannot use this color grading layer because I have this midtone mask controlling midtones. And what if I wanted to really target shadows? So what I'd have to do is click this plus, add another color grading layer, and then click on the shadow button. And I really want to cool those shadows off. I'm going to click outside of the color wheel right here to give me maximum color. You see that there? And now let's go ahead and darken up those shadows a little bit to maybe somewhere right around in there. But I really only want to target the darkest shadows. So again, I can X out of the color grading tool. Nothing changes on this layer. Let's go back into Edit Layer Mask mode. And now let's try Darks 1. There's Darks 1. Here's Darks 2. Edit Layer Mask mode is great because it lets us see how things are changing whenever we click the different luminosity buttons. Here's Darks 3. Here's Darks 4. And now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. See, it's only targeting those darkest tones. So that's pretty cool. And that's the way I like to work with luminosity masks with Edit Layer Mask mode. Let me click X here. Nothing will change because I have my mask created. Now I'll click X to disable this mask and look at the difference. There's before and there's after. And again, I'll shut the layer off. Here's before and here's after. And now you see the dark tones are getting that little bit of a blue color grade. Now, what about Edit Blend If? Let me go ahead and get rid of this mask by clicking this button. That gets rid of the mask. And if you want to put another mask on there, like a white mask, click this button again, and there's your white reveal all mask. Let me click this button so we can see the color grading tool again. And there you can see, there is my color grade right there. And if I click on the shadow button, you can see where my brightness slider is set to. Now let's see if we can use Edit Blend If to get a similar result where I'm only targeting those darkest shadows. So let me go ahead and click X on the color grading tool. Nothing changes here. Let's click the Edit Blend If button. And now remember, I'm working in dark tones. So here's Darks 1, here's Darks 2. And this is kind of like getting into the Edit Layer Mask mode, only we're working with Blend If. Here is Darks 3, here is Darks 4. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. And remember, I can make adjustments on these sliders. If I click on this handle right here, I can drag this to the left a little bit and just tighten that up a little bit more. Or if I want to widen the range, I'll click on this top handle and just drag it to the right a little bit more and widen out that range. You see that? Like right there. Now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here is after. Now what would it look like if I shut Edit Blend If off? See where it says gray and that checkbox? Click on the checkbox. This is without Edit Blend If and this is with Edit Blend If. Now you know you can target specific shadows, midtones, or highlights using luminosity masking or Edit Blend If. I'll click X to close the Edit Blend If panel. Nothing changes on my Edit Blend If layer. Well, what about working with the color mask? Let me click on the color mask button. And let's choose like some of these reds right here and click OK. More oranges, I guess. And let me go ahead and narrow that a little bit. Let me pull this top handle in a little bit. Now maybe go the opposite way. Maybe pull the bottom handle in a little bit. Yeah, I really just want to target that red color right in there. And we can lighten it up a little bit with this. Nah, I don't want to lighten it up too much. Let's just go right about there. Let's output this to a color grading tool by clicking on this button here. And now we already have that mask there, right? And so now let's click on midtones and let's click our color picker for the color grading tool. And let's sample this color. Maybe I just want to enrich all the reds in this image. So I'll click right about here and click OK. And now you notice, see this bush right in here and all the reds that are out in the image. If I shut this off, here is before and here is after. So yes, you can also use color masks, which is really cool. I'm not going to spend the time right now, but you can also work, I'm going to X out of the color grading tool. Again, nothing changes. You can also work with zone masks, to target a shadow, midtone, or highlight, or any zone that you want. That'll work as well with color grading. Now, let's see what happens if I disable this mask by clicking this X. It would look like this, and that would look horrible, right? But let me click X to enable the mask, and now it looks like this, and I'll shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, and that puts a smile on my face. The next thing I want to show you is how to split tone or tri-tone your black and white images. One of my favorite things to do. And sometimes all you need is a color grade in the midtones. Say for instance this image right here. It's just a stock image, black and white image. Let me click on my color grading tool button in the multi-mask panel. Let's click on midtones and let's say we want some sepia here. So sepia, I think, will sit right about here. Now look at my cursor in the tip. Whenever I click, I will drop a puck. But look at that. There is a sepia tone, just in the midtones, and that could be quite beautiful. But you don't have to stop there. You may want to go next to highlights. So I'll click on my highlight button. And now maybe I want to add some more of that warm effect to the highlights. So let me come up pretty high here and click right about here. And see how those highlights are getting that? Now that's too much, so I'm going to come down here. Remember, the saturation decreases as you keep coming in. and maybe to right about here. Okay, so now I've added some of that warm tone to my highlights, and now let's go to our shadows. I would call this like a tritone because I'm going to add toning to shadows, midtones, and highlights. And now for my shadows, let's say I want to make them a little on the cool side. So I'm going to click right about here and see how that just cools off those shadows. Now that is really pretty. And don't forget, right now I still have my transform tool. It doesn't use number shortcut keys, so I can come and type my 7 key to tone that down a little bit. How about my 6 key and maybe my 5 for 50%? Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. Just a nice subtle toning on my black and white image. Isn't that cool? Now, let's say this is your signature look and you want to save it as a preset. Well, we can do that in the color grading tool. Click this button and we have our presets here. Now, I could come here and click the plus and give it a name, like BW for black and white, sepia, mids, highlights, cool shadows, and I'll click OK. And there it is right there. And now you'll notice we have all these other color grades in here as well. So we can sample these guys out. So I can click on black and white, sepia, mids, cool shadows, see what that looks like. How about black and white, sepia, mids only? There you go. Black and white, warm, mid, cool shadows. So we could click on these different ones. Now, when you click on one and you click the same thing again, it'll go to the last one you've clicked on. For instance, if I go to the one we just made, sepia, mids, and highlights, cool shadows, so we'll click on that and we'll compare it to the warm, mids, magenta shadows. So now if I click warm, mids, magenta shadows, it'll change it to the one below it. You see that? I can just keep clicking back and forth till I find the one I like. And I think I like the one I just made, so I'll click on that. And it's just that easy. Now, if you click on the current color grade, it will be the same as this one right here. So let's click on current color grade, and you don't see anything change there because that is the color grade that I just made a preset of. And once you're happy, click the X, and there is your color grade on there. So play around with color grading, experiment with different color tones, and if you find one you like, go ahead and save that out as a preset. And then it makes it really easy to come back later and apply those presets to your black and white image. Now you can save color grading presets for color images, black and white images. You know, the sky is the limit. This is the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. Would we expect anything less? The last thing I want to show you is how to take a color grade from one image and apply it to another image. So I have this image here, and I like this dreamy color grade. And now let me click on my second image, and I want to apply that color grade to this image. Now, it'll look close. It's never going to look 100% the same, but it'll get you pretty darn close. So again, I want to take this color grade and put it on this image. And this will work best if you get images that are kind of close in luminosity values to each other. The first step is to have your two images in Photoshop. And then what you want to do is come to the Photoshop menu, click Window, and then go to Arrange. And then what you want is 2 up vertical. So click on 2 up vertical. And then resize each one of the images. Right now I'm on this image right here. So if we click this button on our combo panel, we'll resize it to fit. And now we'll click on this image and click the same button to resize it to fit. That way we can see the two images side by side. Right now, this is the active image that I'm editing, and you can see the name up here. It's in white, and this one's grayed out. But I want this image active, so click on the name of this image, and now it is active because I want to take the color grade from this image and put it onto this image. And next I need to get a color grading tool. So let's come up to the multi-mask panel and click on the color grading tool. And now we have a color grading tool. Next, what we need to do is pick a tone we want to work with. And I think I'll work with the highlights first. See, the highlights are kind of on the yellow side here. So let's click on the highlight button. And now let's click on our picker tool because we need to sample a color. So I'm going to sample this color right here. Now, if you're on a PC, you simply just click. If you're on a Mac, you need to either double click or command click. I'm going to double click right here, and there's my color. And I'm going to give it a little bit more saturation. I'm going to come over to the right here, but at that same luminosity level right here, and click OK. We don't see much change here. Let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. See, it gets a little bit of that yellow in there. But what I think I'll do is just darken up the highlight a little bit, and I think that'll show through a little bit better to maybe somewhere right around in there. And if you want a little bit more saturation, just keep coming straight up this way and add more. But I think that's good. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. That's good. That's the highlights. Now let's click on the midtone button and click on the picker again, and let's sample a midtone maybe right around here. I'm going to double click this and click OK. And now we've added some blue to the midtones, and I want to darken those up a little bit to maybe right there, a -16. And now let's click on our shadow button. Click on the picker button, and now I'll get a shadow, maybe right about here. I'll just double click, and there's my shadow, and I'll click OK. And I think I like that, but I may lighten up those shadows a little bit, so I'm going to click like right here. And I think I like that. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. Now it's close. It's never going to be 100% identical, but I think it's coming close to capturing the mood of the image on the right. I'm not done yet. I want to lighten up this subject a little bit. So to do that, let's come over to the combo panel and click on this button to select our subject. And now we can click the plus to add another color grading tool. And all I want to do is lighten up the midtone, so we need to click on the midtone button, and I'm just going to click right here. That may be good, maybe just a little bit more to right about here. I think I like that. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, and I like that. I think that's getting closer. Next, I want to work on this hat. I'm going to grab the object selection tool. I'm going to click on it and just select this hat like this. Let's click plus to add another color grading tool, and you can note the layer mask is only targeting the hat. And now I'm going to click on my picker tool, but before I do that, I'm going to click on the midtone button, and now click on the picker tool. And now I want to sample this red in the dress, maybe like right here. Double click, because I'm on a Mac, remember? Or if you're on a PC, you just do a single click, and I'll click OK. And now I have that color grade there. And let me see, I may lighten that up just a little bit. Yeah, maybe to right there. I'm just trying to get it closer to match that color, and I think that's pretty good. I'll leave it at that. Now, I like the color, but I think it's a little oversaturated, so here's what I'll do. I'm going to X out of the color grading tool by clicking right here. Nothing changes on my color grade. Let's click on the hue saturation adjustment layer and click this button right here to clip it to the layer below. And now I'll just decrease that saturation a bit to maybe somewhere right about there. I think I like that. Now, what I think I want to do is put all of these layers in a group. The top layer is selected. Hold your shift key down and click right around here on that bottom layer. See, all those layers are selected. On the combo panel, you'll find your group button right here. And then on the CX panel, you'll find it right here. I'm going to go to the combo panel. On the left side, you get a black hide all mask. On the right side of the button, you get a white reveal all mask. I'm going to click on the right side. And now I have that all in a group. So let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. But the nice thing about this is I can take this opacity and pull this back a little bit if I want to reduce my effect to maybe somewhere right around there at 88%, maybe a little bit more. Let's go up to like 91. So let me shut this layer off. Here is the before and here is the after, and I like it. So now you know how to copy a color grade from one image and apply it to another image. Now, a lot of times you can apply that just to one color grading layer and do the whole thing, but in my case, I'm going to open up this group. You saw there was my first color grading layer, then I worked on the subject secondly, and then I worked on the hat, and then I pulled the saturation down on the hat and put it all in a group. So sometimes you can get away with just that one layer. Well, there it is, everyone. This concludes the color grading tool deep dive. And don't forget to download the PDF notes that I gave you with last week's video. Get those. They cover this week's video as well. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. Click all so that you'll receive all notifications. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.